Okay, hopefully this works. 'Cause I'm a little slow tonight. Are we good here? Yep. Cool. All right. Yeah, things are not as good as they should be. Ah! Ah, crap. Is that better? Yeah. Whatever. I'll figure that out later. It's background. It is literally background. Anyway. Okay. Hi. So, where did we leave off? Oh yeah. Because I have two different places I'm posting that, so this is why it's showing up in chat twice. But all right. Arg. Yeah, I apologize for being a little bit behind tonight. Whoops. EDH rank by descending. All right. Yeah, I got called. Well, I got a message this morning. Let's start at the beginning. I got a message yesterday asking, from my LGS, where I occasionally put in hours, saying, "Hey, by the way, can you come in for a few hours?" Or actually, let me rephrase that. Let's be more accurate. When are you available this week? Because they will ask that sort of thing because they know I want hours. And my availability is generally the same week to week, but there's going to be the occasional time when it's not. I work elsewhere doing the overnight shift on Saturday night and Sunday night. So yesterday was Monday. And so I finished my shift Monday morning. And I hung out and got yapping to the manager because my manager and I, thankfully, we have a fairly decent rapport with each other. And there we go. So we got chatting about stuff that's going on. Some of it work related, some of it not. And my shift's supposed to finish at 7, and finally around 8 o'clock, I'm like, okay, I should probably go home. So I left work. And then an incident happened on the bus. Nothing major, nothing to worry about. Somebody tried getting on the bus and slipped and fell. Now it's winter time here. We've had snow the last couple of days. Tried getting on the bus, slipped, possibly banged their head. So the driver's like, well, now that that's happened, even though the passenger says they're okay, the driver did what is, in my opinion, the right thing to do, whether people like it or not. Said, okay, just be on the safe side. We're going to wait for an ambulance to get here because, somebody bangs their head, you know, on the bus. And we don't mean head bang, we mean, you know, collision with a part of the bus. We're going to make sure we're going to wait for an ambulance to get here. We're going to call dispatch. We're going to say what's happened. We're going to wait for the ambulance to show up. Once the ambulance shows up, they'll look after him and we'll continue from there. Cannot blame the driver for doing that. Probably could have communicated it better to the passengers or whatever. But can't really complain about following that procedure. I know if this happened to me, I would be thankful that, you know what, we're going to make sure before we do anything else that you're okay or somebody's looking after you, i.e. waiting for an ambulance, this, that, whatever. Make sure you're okay. I can understand that. I can appreciate that. I can accept that. I'm also on my way home at that point. And I don't have any plans for the rest of the day. So I can accept that. All right. So the bus is delayed by about 15 minutes. This is basically where I just got on the bus to get from my place, to get from work back to the town I live in, which is usually about half an hour. At about the halfway mark, there's an A&W restaurant, as in the root beer brand, where I like to stop to get food on the way home. Because I'm finishing work at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's easy to find somewhere that can do bacon and eggs at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's not as easy to find somewhere on your way home that does hamburgers and fries or something of that nature. Or fish and chips or anything dinner related. Anything lunch menu, dinner menu, whatever. That's harder to find at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. So that's where I go. And they're decent people there too, which also helps. I like dealing with them. So we get in, and I'm there for probably half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. Get my food into me. Then I get back into town. I have to stop a few stops before where I normally get out because I have to go somewhere. I have to pop into the local drugstore and load up my bus pass because I'm currently using my last trip that's on my bus pass. I take a look at the bus schedule, and the next bus to get me around the corner from my place is going to be about half an hour. I can walk home easily within that time frame. It's more like 20-25 minutes from where I am. From where I was, probably 25 minutes. So then I start walk. But then my brother lives not too far from me. I have to stop by his neighbor to go take care of something else. I finally get home around 10:30 in the morning. All that to say, I had a very long day Sunday night, Monday morning. Figure out something to eat. No, I already ate. Muck around online for a little bit and go to bed. Sometime in the middle of the afternoon, my LGS messaged me and said, "Hey, what's your availability this week?" Pretty sure I was dead to the world when the message came in. So I finally messaged them at like 3 o'clock in the morning saying, "Hey, sorry I missed your message. Been a long day, yada, yada, yada. Here's what my availability is. I can come in today," as in this is now Tuesday. But I'm messaging them at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody's going to be live. Nobody's going to be around at that point. So I set an alarm for 8 o'clock in the morning, figuring sometime within the next hour and a half they'll message me back. Somebody will message me back and say, "Hey, by the way, can you come in today?" Finally, I decided I'm going to make something to eat. I normally don't end up making breakfast just because I probably should more often. I commonly don't, but I should. I made bacon, eggs, and toast. I had food. I got a message around, I think it was 9:30 this morning. "Can I come in today? When can I come in?" So I go in. I put in from 11:30 because I figured that's the earliest I can reasonably get there. I put in from 11:30 till about 4:30. Get chatting with some of the, I'm working at a game store. I might as well look at some of the stuff that I might want that they might have there. And yeah, then I finally made it home. I made it home around 5:45. I start my stream at 6. I'm a little behind with streaming today. That's the TLDR of what my last. This is the TLDR of why I'm late today. I was working another job today that I probably could have been arranged for if I had actually gone to bed. If I had basically come straight home and gone to bed yesterday. Anyway, meanwhile, back at the ranch salad dressing. Hi, how you doing? So now we're looking at the multicolored cards for Legends. You will notice at the top there is a card that is not multicolored. But it's the first card that actually has a multicolored color identity. And if you look at what the search at the top here says, and let's make this bigger so it's easier to read, where the set is LEG, i.e. Legends, and it's legal and commander and vintage. I should just go by legal and commander right now, but it's more or less the same thing, and it's habit because like old cards it won't matter, but newer stuff when you have to start worrying about stickers and attractions and all that stuff, I'm not mucking around with that. Go away. That's a me thing. If you decide that's the thing you want to do, be my guest. Just be aware it's not a thing I am interested in dealing with. Anyway, and the cards have multicolored identity. This is a green card with a red mana symbol. in its text. We have one card that has a monocolor, or that is monocolored. In fact, if we scroll quickly through the list, you'll notice that gold bordered. This is the reason, incidentally, why a lot of multicolor cards commonly get referred to as, gold cards when you're talking Magic, because this is the colors that the color of the border indicates what color it is. Well, this is gold, so this indicated multicolored. And this is the first set that had them. So, let's do like the bottom, say 3 rows. We might go a bit further. We'll go 3 rows, though, at least. So, Pavel Maliki, or Malachi, however you want. I might actually call him Malachi. Legendary creature human. I am surprised that Pavel does not have a type like cleric, or, I mean, based on the very little that I know, plus the flavor text, I could see cleric, I could see potentially knight, or, if it's not a knight, if they don't have the superior training for being a knight, at least a soldier or a warrior. I'm a little surprised he's just simply listed as human. For those that aren't aware, the background of Legends is that these are all based on characters from a particular group's D&D game. Dungeons and Dragons, to my recollection. Okay, we're talking 1993, 1994. 3rd edition hadn't come out yet. If they were playing under 2nd edition, I believe you still typically... No? I believe even in 2nd edition you had, just plain humans as an option. However, I think it would be unusual, because if you look at the cost, look at the fact that he's legendary, and look at the size of the creature. A 6 mana 5/3 legendary creature. If you compare that to Dungeons and Dragons, you're probably looking at somebody who is not unrealistically probably around 10th level or so. Depending on the version of the game that you're playing, but even 1st and 2nd edition, I could see this being a 10th level character. I would find you could only be just a human, if memory serves me correctly, if your level was lower than 1. If you were a 1st level character, you had to be a human fighter, a human cleric, a human, a human assassin, a human something. So I find it unusual that when they went and started giving various legendary creatures an actual creature type. Where is she? Huh. Don't see it unless I start thinking of who specifically earlier. Oh, no. Oh, what was your name? Lady of the Mountain was a giant. That was acceptable. You're also a giant. Bartel Runax is a giant warrior compared to Lady of the Mountain and Axelrod Gunnarsson, which are just giants. Tucknir Deathlock, human wizard. So stuff like this makes sense. You gave Tucknir a race and a class. Why is Pavel only got a race? Do I have you view on Gatherer? Yeah, legendary creature, human. So unless it was somebody like a merchant, but then like a 10th level, something equivalent to a 10th level character, you're probably not looking at a human unless you're going to give them it. D&D prior to 3rd edition was like if you're going to just be a human, you were 0 level. If you were going to be higher than 0 level, you had to have a class. And there weren't really NPC classes available. 3rd edition, they gave them to us. 3rd edition, you had the expert. You had the... oh, what do you call it? You had a warrior, which is like a fighter, but without some of the special fighter bonus stuff. You had the adept, which was a spellcaster who could take some from wizard and some from cleric. And cast somewhere around like a bard's ability. You had the aristocrat, and there was a 5th one. Oh, the commoner, which had one place where it was actually really useful, and it was so you could jump into the Survivor Prestige class really fast. But prior to that, you really didn't have classes for NPCs, and if you wanted somebody that was equivalent to a 10th level character, you had to give them a class. So Pavel, and plus based on the flavor text, we all know the legend. Pavel wanders the realms, helping those in greatest need. But is this a measure of his generosity or of his obligation to atone? I would assume he is some sort of cleric knight type person, especially based on, this script that goes around his head. This looks like you don't see this outside like a holy person or a ruler is basically realistically is when you see this going on. I would assume in this case we are looking at a holy person. That being said, man, that's a tangent. Hi, welcome to me. Welcome to dealing with me and my tangents. So, that being said, Pavel Malachi. Malachi makes more sense. I apologize. I just got a message from a person. I do not remember who this person is. Like, I know it's a person I know. I just don't remember who. Uh, View profile. Someone local-ish. I am going to have to look to see who this person is later. I apologize if you message me while I'm streaming. Or I should say, message me over Steam while I'm streaming. When I figure out who you are, I will message you back, or when I finish my stream, I will message you back later. Anywho, so what can we do with this? He's got an interesting fire breathing ability, which to me suggests if I'm building a deck with this, maybe a deck where a lot of my creatures have the ability to pump. Alternatively, something that might be a bit more interesting would be a deck where they just simply have, one creature type. It's not unusual to have. I think it's somewhat feasible to have a creature that is a type elf without being like elven druid or elf druid or elf shaman or something of that nature. We're talking with respect to magic here, not D&D. That's another tangent altogether. We're talking D&D, we're talking magic here. I think Pavel as a deck idea is buildable. A human tribal deck I think would be entertaining, especially if you could find a bunch of cards that were only type human. I think the pump ability could be interesting. But I think in general you're going to find better options. I could see a monotyped deck though. Fire Sprites. So weird. So, 2 mana for a 1/1 flyer, which I would have considered it in my mono green control deck because it's 2 mana for a 1/1 flyer, which is not horrible when you're looking at green, except this ability. You pay a green and tap and it becomes a red. If this was, add 1 mana of any color, that could have made it into the deck. But for the name. I think it's also conceivable that back then they could have had, like, say, 1 red, 1 other for a 1/1 flyer that had pay 1 and tap it, add red, or something of that nature. I think that would have been in the realm of possibility. Fire Sprites is going to be this is going to be one of those cards that you're playing for the flavor. I don't think it's a bad card per se, but you're playing it largely for the flavor, which is a perfectly acceptable way to build a deck. I mean, look at my list of decks here. You know, I have cards that are, oh yeah, like my Yu-Gi-Oh deck. This is very much based on the flavor of cards. I have traps. I have a few cards that feel like, that do something to feel like Exodia. I have. I apologize. I should have only gone with like 3 god cards. Um, Stuff entering in defense position. I don't remember what the play restriction thing was about. I don't remember the specifics on that. Um, Fusion slash exceed slash ritual, i.e., there are cards that turn around and sacrifice this or take these couple materials or however you want to word them and put them together to become a thing. And so that's what these are for. Yu-Gi-Oh's got a great way of being able to play cards that are exiled. So that's what these guys are for. Stuff that play, having your creatures enter face down in defense position is a thing that happens. Well, that's morphs. And the like. These 2 cards are there to be my Regeki, plus an extra piece of emergency removal. And then just, you know, you are playing Magic, you are going to want some mana rocks. Note this is not a typo here. I spelled duel D-U-E-L on purpose because it's, Yu-Gi-Oh is a duel. And then just, whatever other lands came up that were interesting. This is again kind of another not Exodia. Well, no, this isn't Exodia because Exodia wins you the game, but this is sacrificing 5. This is more like one of those fusion things that's going on. So yeah, you want to build a deck based on flavor. Go right ahead. Who am I to say no? Fire Sprites. This is one of those cards where you play green and you play some red. Is what this is for. Tuck near Deathlock. It is a bit overcosted. I think even back then it would have been considered a bit overcosted. But, I mean, to be fair, red and green really didn't get a lot of good playable flying creatures. So, based on back then, I could probably say paying red plus green plus another one. Let's say red, green, and a half to get a 2/2 flyer. And then pay red, green, and tap it to almost giant growth a creature. So you're looking at about another 1.5 mana. No, you know what? I think I think if I think back then they could have they probably you know what? I think if they had gone just simply red green for the mana cost or no mana on the activation cost or no tap symbol on the activation cost, because that's a third option. I think any of those three options would have been considered fair. I remember people not really. This was never a card I remember people having any interest in. Nowadays, and this is somewhat borne out too, in that it's it's a rare card on the reserved list that's only say $18. I think and because if you had followed any of those three options, make it just red and green to cast, which I think probably would have been okay nowadays for sure, but probably okay at that point because realistically, in most games, you're not getting it out till turn 3 or 4 anyway. Or no mana in the activation or no tap symbol in the activation. I think any of those three options would have been worth like 10 times as much. Just for frame of reference. Let's go with somebody that's not overpowered, but still good. Yeah, you're a rare from the same set with, you're fairly costed with a protective ability that can remove other stuff. And you're worth basically $100. You're worth over 5 times. Say 5.5 times what this is. Because 5 times 18 would be 90. So we'll say 5.5 times what Tucknear is. And you're the same rarity and you're the same set. Any of those abilities and you would have been upwards around what Tetsuo was. That being said, we're not just here to talk about the problems of the card. We're talking about where can we actually realistically use it. It's a red-green human wizard. Green gets some wizards, but not a lot. They tend more to get druids and the like. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It is by no means impossible. It is actually quite doable. But you're more likely to find other classes first. And red is more likely to get sorcerers. Could we make this an interesting tribal deck? I mean, human, that's the easy part. So what about a red-green wizard deck? So there's an interesting idea. There is only one, because this does not count, because this tells me it is not in paper, it's arena only. So if you want to play Gruul Wizards, you could play Gruul Wizards. and there's 108 options. So it's doable. EDH rank. Yeah, without scanning too hard, there are enough playable cards. I've already gone through like 20. And it's like, yeah, it's doable. I think if you want to do something crazy and go Gruul Wizards, Legends gives you a general. I think that would be an interesting take on it. I just want to double check on a thing real quick. Anything that can block the relevant type of landwalk is a creature with first strike. This blocks island. This blocks swamp. This blocks plains and forest. No, none of them block mountain walk. But they all have first strike. Alright, white and blue. Okay, you know what? I can accept this. Considering we're talking Legends, where they were still trying to figure out how to balance cards out properly, I can accept Gosta Dirk being, I think, maybe cut a mana off, but realistically, it's a 7 mana 4/4 first strike that can block Island Walk, and that is one of the most popular land walks. Let's be honest here. Especially when you have, various merfolk lords that turn around and say, hey, by the way, you get Island Walk while you're at it. I cannot. I mean, I would probably want to make him a 5/5 instead of a 4/4. But other than that, I am perfectly fine with that. Now, as so here's the thing. I probably would want to play him in the 99. If I'm playing him, I doubt he'd be, and this is true with most of the for the most part with any of this cycle. Note that there's only 3 of them. Calling it a cycle is a bit weird. Especially since Mountain Walk is not included. But I think I would play you somewhere in the 99 just to muck over people that wanted to play with Landwalk. And even without that, it's still a 7 mana 4/4 first strike, which is, well, not amazing. Because the way I see this, I'm looking at probably 5 mana for 4/4 first strike, which is but it's not terrible bad. Because you gotta remember, getting first strike on a small creature when you're playing white is not really that hard. Getting first strike on a larger creature usually requires some more effort. Putting having a 2/2 with first strike, you can pay 2 mana and you're fine. If you're putting first strike on a 4/4, I think it's or 5/5, I think it's reasonable to expect to have to pay an extra mana. And part of that is also from the fact that it's a small, it's a larger creature. I wouldn't call this big, but it is on the larger side. Which, part of that also comes from, so the reason it makes more of a difference on a larger creature is that it requires more effort to bypass. If I have a 2/2 first strike and you have a 3/3, or even a 2/3, your creature is going to survive combat. It's going to survive the first strike, barring nothing else, and hit back and kill mine. On a 4/4, you suddenly need something that's got at least 5 toughness. And because it's got 4, because this has got 4 toughness, it's going to have to be at least a 4 or 5. Which suddenly you're looking at, not unrealistically, 5 or 6 mana. So first strike, even from that perspective, it makes a bit more sense to have to spend more on it. This will just outright kill anything that's not at least a 4 or 5. That's quite a bit. And then you're paying double blue to be able to counteract Island Walk. Now, counteracting Landwalk in general is pretty decent. Regardless of what kind of Landwalk it is. Counteracting Island Walk is kind of a big deal. I think this might be over by like a mana, but rather than take a mana off, I'd probably make it a 5/5 instead. That might be iffy. I think the smarter move would be to take a mana off. I think the smarter move would be to take a mana off. I think it would make it 2/2 and 2. Or you could do something really crazy because they were trying to figure out what made sense. Just call it a day and go triple white and triple blue. But yeah, again, I would have no problem with somebody throwing this in 99. I don't really see, unless you're building a deck based around first strike, in which case, oh, there are 28 creatures that have first strike. Brazilla doesn't really count because you have to build her off of Bruna and Gisela. Gisela being the half that actually has first strike. So Brazilla getting it. That's kind of cheating. But can get first strike. You know what? Sort by color. Can get first strike if your opponent has first strike. This is hilarious. First strike. Has first strike as long as you've got a plains. Also gets lifelink. This is great. If I'm building an Azorius first strike deck, Sejuri Merfolk should be in there. Vodalian Knights. This is great. This is a lot better, I think, than most people give it credit for. Can't attack if you have no islands. Or sorry, if defending player has no islands. If you have no islands, you sack it. AKA, around 5th edition, they called that Island Home. So 2/2, first strike, activated flying for 3 mana and Island Home. That is really good. This removes first strike. So realistically, potentially playable for first strike. Playable. Well, sorry, maybe playable. Playable, and this removes it. I see at least 4 cards that, well, 3 cards for sure. And then, so no white cards, obviously, because I said take out all the cards that are blue, or that are white. And then, so we've got 6, 1 that's a meld of 2 others. So 7, so that leaves 22. This, I think, is underappreciated. Yeah. But you can, I think you can find, a handful more. Say 4. What else is worth playing? Again, a 7 mana, 4/4 first strike. Argenta Mastercore? Sure. You could play the Chimera Suite. Those things are fun. 3 mana for 2/1 is not terrible bad. Crystalline Giant will get there eventually. Oh yeah, Flowstone Sculpture. This thing is just going to get, like, this is one of those cards where you want a discard outlet that will just get out of hand. And you're like not even $1. Remove a counter. I think if you've got a way to manipulate the counters, you really want coming to play with like 4 or 5. Mantis Engine. This is not bad. I would be okay with that. Pilgrim of the Fires, really good. Will stop in front of like so much and just go, no, die. Mastercore. Razormane Mastercore is really good. When it attacks, if you control 3 or more other tokens. Yeah. So this is basically just a 4/1 first strike as long as you've got enough clue tokens and treasure tokens and whatever else floating around. Each creature has these abilities of it. Okay. So anything that's red suddenly gets first strike. This, yeah, no wonder the base printing is like $20. Not surprised. It just does so much. Tech. Play this in a deck that's got frickin' Dryad of the Illicit Grove and stuff like that. And then this suddenly is a 4/4 flying first strike trample for 5 mana. And it's like 2 cards. You do the same thing with Scion of Draco. Suddenly it's a 2 mana 4/4 flying. The rest doesn't matter. I mean, you're playing with Dryad of the Illicit Grove, so it's going to be a 4/4 flying trample minimum. Throw any enchantment on it, and this is suddenly a 5/5 flying first strike trample. In fact, Eldrazi Conscription. Yeah, it's the only colorless enchantment that you can throw on a creature. +10/+10 trample and annihilator 2. So this now goes to a 15/15 flying trample annihilator 2. This is still decent. And if you're playing with walls for whatever reason, Wall of Spears is still fine. And Haunted Guardian is still fine. 2 mana for a 2/3 first strike. 3 mana, or sorry, for a 2/1 first strike. 3 mana for a 2/3 first strike. They're still fine. Anyway, but yeah, if you're looking to build a white-blue first strike deck, yeah, Gosta Dirk would probably be fine. Urdrago. The same, so anything that applies to Gosta Dirk is going to apply to Urdrago. However, he's also an elemental. And that's going to open up a completely different suite of options. You know, because now instead of taking a look and going, well, he's a human warrior, meh, let's build around first strike. Now you look at Urdrago and go, I could build an elementals deck based on that. You know. This is, what's blue-black? Dimir. You know, you only have Urdrago available as a general. You've got a couple other cards that are elementals. This is the elemental on its backside. But as a general, you only have Urdrago. And, you know, sure, you can make the argument for Mistform Ultimus and all that other stuff. But Mistform Ultimus, or not Mistform Ultimus, Morophon. But then you're going to play 5 color elementals. This is saying, no, play Dimir. I could see a deck for that. Lord Magnus. Lord Magnus. Lord Magnus is me turning around going, let's find something interesting to do with you. You're Selesnya. I went with this. And I'm not going to go deep through it. But Lord Magnus, I took a look at him and went, okay. You block Planeswalk, you block Forest Walk, you're 4/3. Notice only a single point of toughness less than Urdrago and Gosta Dirk. But that's enough to cut an entire colored mana off. I think if I was going to do that, I either would have made him a 4/4 like the others. You know, I want that green mana symbol there. Make him a 4/4, make him a 5/5, make him a, maybe give him something, an additional ability, something. Anyway, he's the only one that blocks 2 different types, but one really doesn't exist. There's maybe half a dozen cards that are remotely playable that have Planeswalk. Forest Walk, on the other hand, is like top tier. I'm betting they cut a mana off because Planeswalk, they didn't know if that was going to be a thing, and they didn't really print much at that point anyway. But I took a look at this guy and I'm like, okay, what else can we add to him? What else can we do with him? So then I decided, you know what? Let's take a look at what else he is. He's a decent sized creature anyway. You know, not terribly costed. You know, again, 3 mana for, or sorry, 5 mana. You know, your 2 white pips and your 3 for 4/3 first strike. Okay, maybe you can get away with making them 1 white and 3 other, or 2 and 1, or sorry, 2 and 2 rather. That leaves a green and, you know, 1 other. Because that 3rd point of toughness missing. Again, now you need a 3/5 instead of a 4/5. And creatures without planeswalk isn't really that big. It's like it's like having an ability on a creature that's redundant but there for flavor reasons. Okay. And then, but anyway, so I took a look at him and I'm like, well, what else is he? He's a human druid. Druid. What can I do interesting with druid? So I started looking at interesting druid abilities. And I came across this guy who is surprisingly cheap. 5 mana for a 3/3 elf druid. Whenever you cast a druid spell, you may draw a card. That's actually really strong if you're building a druid tribal, which is really easy to do if you're in green, because a lot of the cards that you want to play in, you know, that you think elf are also incidentally druids. Tap 7 untapped druids you control. Gain control of all lands target player controls. So, whoops, wrong one. So what did I do? So, Lord Magnus is my general. He's a human druid. Which, if you look at the art, you might be able to pick up on that. Ways to draw, you know, whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. Cycle from play to draw a card, and when it dies, you get extra lands. Kick it to draw cards. Search for 3 creatures, put them on top. Pitch a creature card to tutor up a creature card to your hand. 11 druids that are not mono green, i.e., I'm playing white green. I need at least white mana. Note, I actually went druid. I didn't go shapeshifter. Druid. You know, when it comes in play, if it was kicked, put a +1 counter on target creature. Taps a druid that taps for mana. That might get me a card back by sacking it. I don't know. I don't think so. This is going to tap for 2. Once this is going to be a 2/2 vigilance that taps for white green. Whenever I cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. Cast enchantment, draw a card. You know, the white green there, white there. Sunseed Nurture taps for mana. One of the very few creatures I can find that I ever remember seeing in white that says, hey, by the way, I tap for mana. Did I make a token this turn? I draw a card. Another creature enters, put a +1 counter on her. This will generate this will either generate citizens and or card draw. This eventually grows saplings to, sack for life. Life druids. I saw this and I thought this was because this is where my brain started with this. I wanted some. I didn't want a lot, but I wanted some. As a root channeler, 6 mana for 4/6 with reach. Tap, you gain 2 life. Creature spells you cast cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. So I wanted some druids. I didn't want a lot, but I wanted some druids that did something about gaining life. Accomplished Alchemist. If this taps to gain me 2 life, this suddenly taps to go, hey, by the way, get 2 mana of any one color. Creature enters, gain a life, so this is basically this is a Soul Sister, that's a bit bigger. Gallow Greeters, same idea. Come into play, gain 3 life. So, some ways, plus a couple, 3 consistent ways of gaining life. Make more toads. Maskwood Nexus, key for so many decks, and surprisingly cheap to cast, or to get your hands on. Okay, that's a Card Kingdom price. You are TCG player. And then you are... Oh, you're proxy printing. Okay, yeah. I wouldn't bother proxying this card. Especially paying to proxy it. I would just spend the couple extra dollars because it's not an expensive card. And just get the card. This is glue for a lot of decks. Riptide Replicator, 4+X. Comes into play, choose a color and creature type. You're going to say Green Druid, realistically. Comes into play with X charge counters on it. 4 and tap, put an XX creature token of the chosen color and type into play where X is number of charge counters on Riptide Replicator. Keep in mind, because it uses counters, you could go, okay, I'll pay 5 mana, and then use some kind of effect to proliferate the counter and make it bigger. This is basically the same thing as Riptide Replicator. It's always a 2/2 creature. And it's 5 to cast and 5 to tap. So this will be better. Like if you go 6 and 4, this this one activation this pulls ahead. But it costs 6. Whereas getting to 5 and 5 is a little easier. On the other hand, incidentally, this is a blue creature. This is colorless. This is 3 and 4. This is 4 and 3. This makes Llanowar Elf tokens. This makes Llanowar Elf tokens that are not called Llanowar Elves. In D&D, at least, druids are known, and sometimes other fantasy as well, druids are known for wielding scythes as a weapon. So when I say something about, making creatures bigger, instead of size matters, I went scythes matters. This is a 5/5 with a pump coming to play ability. This pumps all your creatures. Beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample till end of turn. Creature overrun as an activate ability. Earthshaker Giant. When it enters, other creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample till end of turn. This I do not expect to ever use as Grandeur ability because I don't expect to have a copy of him in play and the ability to have this go back to my hand. Theoretically possible. I'm not expecting it. I am simply expecting this to be whenever force comes into play, green creatures you control get +1/+1 gain trample till end of turn. I'm expecting a 4/4 for 5 with that ability. And then Kesa. Because I think I may have pulled her out of my mono green control deck. Enchant Druids. These are druids that are also enchantments because I have some enchantresses. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, whenever an enchantment is put into any graveyard from play, gets +1/+1 for each enchantment on the battlefield. So I want to make sure I've got some enchantments, which are also druids. A little bit of acceleration. This spelling, this is based on a, what are you, Saturday Night Live skit. There was a recurring character they had. I can't remember what he's called, but I think he was supposed to be from like Louisiana or something like that. And just the way he said certain words, you know, would end like this. Like if it ended with Tion, he would pronounce it that way. Anyway, druids that would why are you what? That is not the druids I'm looking for, sir. That is the same Did you literally just copy and paste that? I don't know what happened. Argothian Elder. Yeah, Elf Druid. Lay Weaver. I do not have Lore Weaver in this deck. Nor do I care. Lure Weaver, I believe, is blue and doesn't do anything I'm looking for this deck. But yeah. All the stuff that gets me extra mana somehow. Guiltleaf Archdruid. We already mentioned that. If somebody's getting out of hand, like somebody wants to go, oh, guess what? Oh my, if somebody's doing the Ashaya thing, and they're getting out of hand, okay, I'll make my 7th druid, tap them all. I'll take all your creatures now, and your lands. What? Well, Ashaya says all your lands are also creatures. Or sorry, all your creatures are also forest lands. Let's slow things down. They're not going to be happy, but shark. This is one of those emergency buttons. Squirrel Wrangler, just because I think it's hilarious. Genesis Wave. We well, I shouldn't say we all know what Genesis Wave does. Reveal the top X of your library. You may put any number of permanent cards with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Then anything that wasn't put on this way goes to the graveyard. So what you really want to do is take a look how many cards are in your library. Let's say 75. How much mana can you generate? I can only hit like 40. Okay, do you have anything that costs 40 minus 3 is 37? That costs, 37 or less? Well, yeah, that's everything. Make that much mana. Flip over the top 37 cards of your deck. Anything that's a permanent goes directly into play. Anything that's not goes to your graveyard. Well, if it's all permanents. Yeah. Selesnya Eulogist lets you populate. So if you've got a token, cool. Make more. Acidic Slime. It's there to blow stuff up. Ruthpad Purifier. Lands you control and land cards in your library are basic. Yeah. Okay, that fixed it. Wow. You're so cheap now. You're like $15, $20 for a while. Yeah. So what that means, if you're looking at stuff that cares about basic lands or non-basic lands, undo join, search for a basic land card. Well, Root Path Purifier, lands you control and land cards in your library are basic, which means any land. That allows you to use undo join to fetch any land. Genesis lets you get creature cards from your graveyard back to hand. Rampushy stuff. I'm playing mono green. My druid's now tapped for green because of Satin. Elven Course. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Never mind the rest. Another enchantment druid. A couple more enchantments. Specifically put in there because, I didn't just want what their ability was. The fact that they were enchantments as well was also relevant. Like for Sanctum Weaver herself. Careful Cultivation. Enchant a creature. Let's say we'll enchant Sutton here. It gets +1/+3 and reach and taps for double green. So he'd now be a 3/5 reach that taps for double green, and still allows my other druids to tap for green. Creatures tap for any color. When it dies, it'll trigger. Was it Femref Archdruid? Sorry, Femref Enchantress, and then comes back into play. So anything that cares about enchantment coming into play is, hey, by the way, I'm back. And then Warm Power Stone, tap for 2 colors, which is fun. Dual lands. Note I actually spelled it properly this time. 11 white-green duels. 14 forest, 6 plains. 4 lands that do interesting things, and then 2 double face cards. Yeah. All that to say, I found something interesting to do with Lord Magnus. And I am building around Lord Magnus. And people are going to be sad if they have to play against Lord Magnus because, Guiltleaf Archdruid is one of those, I have to be that guy now? Okay, I'll be that guy. But I can play it, as a normal deck and just use Guiltleaf Archdruid as, okay, it's a card that does a thing. Shrug. But there are ways to build him that are safe. Uh, Hunding Bjornsson. Yeah, some people are going to have problems with. Considering this name looks like it comes from something in the region of like Dutch or something of that nature. Uh, Dutch, Danish, Swedish, probably more Swedish or Norwegian, probably more likely, or Finnish. Um, I I know definitely for German and Dutch, the letter J is pronounced the way in English we pronounce a Y. It's a Y. I believe for Finnish and other languages of that ilk, you also have the same thing. So if you pronounce it like G, like it's spelled GYO, it's suddenly, it comes out a lot easier. That being said, he's a 6 mana, 5/4 with an ability. It's got Rampage of 1, which, as we said last episode, Rampage basically looks at all the creatures that are blocking it, leaves the first aside, and basically looks at all the extras and goes, hey, hey guys, y'all just gave me a boost, you know that, right? What? Y'all just gave me a boost, you know that, right? But it is. I just realized a thing. I apologize. I have to check up on a thing real quick. Okay. I think I'm good. Sorry. Need to make sure I didn't oops with how I'm streaming this to YouTube. Anyway. The problem is Rampage of 1 is only +1/+1 till end of turn. So that means, he'll help kill a few creatures, but if it's being blocked by a handful of 2/2s, it'll clear out eventually. Let's do some quick math. You have a 5/4. I'm gonna do this on. You know what? I will just do that here. I'll do it this way. Let's do that. Oh, no, sorry. Now, I'm going to block it with a 2/2. Now, the first one that blocks it won't make any difference. The second one that blocks it will pump it. The third one that blocks it is now a 7/6. 2/2 2/2 and 2/2 basically adds up to a 6/6. A 7/6 so this will, so blocking with 3 will kill him. Blocking with 4 will kill him. Blocking with 5? Oh my god. Because this is a 9/8 versus basically a 10/10. In case you're wondering why I'm using the backward slash, because what I'm using is a spreadsheet thing, if I use a forward slash, I may turn around and think I'm trying to do a formula. So I'm using a backward slash to save on that. So here, Hunding wins. Hunding wins. They trade because 6 power versus 6 power here versus 6 toughness here. Here they trade because 8 power here versus 8 toughness here. And here the 2/2s pull ahead. So if you block with 2 creatures, Hunding wins. If you block with 5 creatures, assuming they're all 2/2s on average, the 2/2 creatures win. So blocking with 3 or 4 2/2s, they'll trade. So this is why I say it's block with 1 or 2 creatures. At this point, you almost might as well give him first strike instead, and that would probably be a bit more effective. And it'll do about the same thing. Actually, first strike would probably be a bit better. So I think I would only put this in a deck where I wanted a creature that had an interesting ability. "16 cards that have the word rampage." There. But if I'm playing with Hunding, I'm playing white-blue. Oh. No. No. "14 creatures that have rampage." Sort by color. Won't count. I'm playing white-blue. So the only white card I can play won't count. If I'm playing white-blue, if I can squeeze it for an extra mana, because this is for an extra 2 mana, which is basically convert one of these to white and add double black. And I can play chromium, which is a lot better. Or I'm playing white blue. I can probably find a way to discard Tika's dragon and bring it back into play, which I should be able to do with, or just cheat in and play directly, which I should be able to do fairly easily in just blue. And Tika's dragon is not even a legendary creature. And incidentally, for reference, this is a 2/2 for 3 mana with Rampage of 1. So I'm paying 2 white and 1 other for an extra 3/2. I'm paying 3 colored mana for 3/2. And at that point, you could get a 3/2 for 3 mana. Well, you could get a 2/3 for 3 mana. You could probably get a 3/2. And only have to pay 2 colored mana for it. I.e., like for example, you can do Heirloom Minotaur would be red, red, 1. Or 2 red mana and 1 colorless. And you would get a 2/3. I think you could get a 3/2 around the same style, mana-wise. So, yeah. So much better. Horrible Hordes is so much better. And Mario Wells Dragon also has Rampage of 1, but it's a 4/6. Swap a power. Swap. This is toughness to Mario's power. And power over to toughness, but add 1 onto the toughness for essentially the same mana cost. That being said, if you're playing red, Arathi Berserker should be in there. Frost Giant should be in there. If you're playing green, Craw Giant is huge. Gorilla Berserkers cannot be blocked by fewer than 3 creatures. I.e., even Menace isn't enough. You need 3 creatures to block it or it's getting through. But if you're blocking with 3 creatures because of Rampage, it's getting +4/+4, and it's got Trample. Yeah, this thing is just dirty. Anyway, talk about getting off on a tangent. Horning Bjornerson, I probably wouldn't play unless I'm looking for cards that have got like an interesting ability. But at that point, if I'm doing that, Horrible Hordes would do better. And if I'm playing Horrible Hordes just for the ability, I should be looking at something that's better. And like if I can get Tika's Dragon to run in, I don't think he's worth playing. Bartel Runex. Now this is one where it's cute. Bartel Runex, in and of itself, I'd be like, he's fine. He's a 6 mana, 6/5 giant warrior. We touched on that earlier, I believe. 6 mana, 6/5 in Jund, which is a really good color trio. Actually, I think most 3 color combinations are actually really good. It's hard to find one that's actually bad. 6/5 with Vigilance cannot be the target of aura spells. So, if somebody goes to cast an aura, it can't target. Also, incidentally, if somebody's got an activated ability of an aura that says, you know, tap target creature or move this enchantment onto target creature or whatever, also cannot target Bartel. Most auras in general will give the ability to the enchanted creature. Some of them have an ability itself, rather than granting it to the creature it's on. But vigilance and can't be targeted by auras. Now, while I think he's fine as, let's say, a general for, say, Giant Tribal, and I think he'd be okay there. What I would be more interested in would be if you're not playing Standard Commander, but if you're playing something like pre-EDH, or basically think of Commander, but when you're restricting yourself to an earlier card pool. So, for the sake of example, nothing that has been printed since the Commander precons back in 2011. So nothing that's 2011 or newer. Or nothing that has been printed with the modern card frame. So everything that's 8th edition and original Mirrodin set or newer. You know, or something of that nature. Or if you really want to do crazy, go to like old school, which is, I think, the most generous definition I remember seeing for old school. Allowed cards up from the start of the game up to Fallen Empires. And go, hey, I'm going to play Commander, but I'm going to play in that time frame. What? Like, most people didn't even know of Elder Dragon Highlander back then. So, if you're doing something like that, where you're restricting yourself to a smaller, earlier card pool, I think Bartel Runeaxe is going to be really, really solid. And obviously, the smaller the card pool you allow yourself, the better he's going to be. Because, for example, if you look at stuff that is, say, prior to Commander 2011, black cards, for example, had a lot of trouble dealing with other black cards. It took a lot of effort to, like, murder, for example, the card, not the cons, not the terrible, horrible, but the card was not a. I don't think the card came out till like was it M12 or something? You actually. M13. Wow. Yeah, M13 was its first printing. Prior to that, if you wanted to destroy target creature, just plain simple outright, like Red had that ability. Let me think here. Date less than 2012 dash oh. Let's go less than 08. 73 cards. Sort by color. So, 8 mana, cheap creatures only. 6 mana, big creatures only. Only if you actually hit somebody. Sack one of your own creatures. Needs bounty counters. 5 mana. Only if you can find a creature that's got a -1/-1 counter on it, which during Standard was a thing. But, destroy target creature with Shadow. 5 mana. Destroy target creature for 2 mana. You lose life equal to that creature's toughness. Expel, so if you want to kill a big creature, it takes a lot of effort. Only something that was dealt damage. You can do this for 2 mana, but only as a sorcery. And only if you've got 2 or more vampires. 2 vampires? Yeah, 2 or more vampires. Dealt damage. Four mana and sack a creature and more. 5 mana. 7 if you kick it, which you need to do to blow up a creature. 5 to cast, 3 to activate. Only hit stuff with a counter on it. 7 to cast, 3 into absolute to activate it. Can only do blockers. Can only blow up cheap creatures. 7 mana with an upkeep cost. Oh, did I not get? How about 7? 73. Okay, got rid of murder. Instead of dealing damage, Necrite was actually okay in that context. Can only hit stuff that was dealt damage. 7 mana. Oh, God. Exile assassins from your graveyard to blow up a creature. Sack humans to blow up creatures. Cheap creatures only. Only works on white creatures. 5 mana. Does proliferate though, so that is something. Cheap creatures. Cheap creatures. Check the color balance. Can only blow up creatures that are smaller than it. can blow up stuff blocking it. 6 mana can only blow up stuff blocking it. 5 mana can only blow up creatures that can only blow up creatures that were dealt damage. Can only blow up the smallest creature. Cindercloud I'm actually okay with playing. I just don't normally find a home for it because usually there's usually other cards in red that are better. Diochan Artful Beauty. Destroy target creature of your choice, then destroy target creature of an opponent's choice. If you put out a Chroma's Memorial, you can stop your stuff from getting targeted. Which means your opponent has to look elsewhere. Diochan Artful Beauty is basically the powered up version of like Quombosh Witches. Oh yeah, speaking of stuff that's better, Fisher. Same, exact same cost, exact same speed. Destroy target creature or land, it can't be regenerated. This, if it puts a white creature in the graveyard, that player takes, its controller takes that creature's power and damage. Destroy target creature and target land for 5 mana. Yeah, and Lava Flow. Basically the same as this, but as a sorcery. Without the can't be regenerated clause. And incidentally, that's common and that's common. You also get to play with Aftershock. And then the ones that have, the ones in green, find one that doesn't say with flying. P.S. They all say flying, with the exception of Tripwire, which says horsemanship instead. So, if you want a decent playable... Oh, sorry. There's more on the next page. Flying. Creature and land. Mana value. Terminate was basically your standby. Wrecking Ball. Basically the better fit. This is basically just Fisher, but for 1 mana less, but for an additional color. This thing was silly. I need to remember this card exists. You just sit there and keep... Because eventually, you'll end up creating enough mana that this will just generate mana for you. I still like to call this a skeet shooter. Basically, that's when you get those clay discs that, get shot up into the air. They get fired into the air, and then somebody grabs like a shotgun or whatever and tries to shoot them out of the sky. Yeah. Throw a thing up into the air, then shoot at it. Anyway, Yeah, like I was saying, the smaller you restrict your um whatchamacallit, the smaller you restrict your, how late you can build your, you can pull cards from to get your, you know the smaller you make your card pool, the better Bartel Runex is going to be. That being said, you could do a lot worse if you were playing, say, Jund Giants or Jund, and actually Jund Giants I could see being pretty reasonable. You know what? I'm curious. Is Commander uh, ID equal Jund and type Giant? He's the only one. If you want to play Jund Giants, he's your guy, and he's still pretty good. And people won't be able to throw. Not only they can't throw face fetters on him, they can't turn him into an elk with Kenris transformation. A lot of removal-ish cards they just can't use for him. Because one kind of card that I really like putting in commander decks are cards that can stop a commander from being useful without getting it off the board, because that makes the person who controls the commander try and find a way to deal with it. And sometimes that means sacrificing their own commander just to get, as an example, pull up Kenrith's transformation. Which makes the creature it's thrown on lose all abilities and turn it into a 3/3 elk. That losing all abilities is huge because a lot of commanders, even if you can't attack or block with it, still get to do a thing. So losing all abilities, that is huge. You throw that on somebody's commander and they're like, well, crap, now what do I do with them? So, yeah. You should always find like one or two cards like that to throw in your deck. And I don't always remember to think of that when I'm sketching out my decks. Sometimes I remember later. And then they have to, in a situation like that, they're like, if they don't have a way to get rid of the aura, they're like, well, I guess I'm sacrificing my General Tashnod's Altar and generating 2 mana, and because I need it to sack it to, I need to sack it to something, throw it back in the command zone, and cast it again, and hopefully be able to use the 2 mana that you just generated to pay the command tax. Yeah. So he has his uses. I think he's okay. And when you're the other thing to keep in mind is a lot of the cards from Legends, because back in the day they only said summon legend, they did not give it a creature type. So now they have to, players have to cross check the oracle to see, or gatherer, for example, and use that to go, okay, well, now I know you are blah, now I can build around you. That, I think, is the biggest drawback with any of the really old cards, is because there's nothing that suggests, like Bartel Runex, you take a look at, there is nothing that I see on the card that suggests what creature type he is. I can assume he's some sort of combat-based class. So Warrior could possibly make sense. I would not have picked up he was a giant. There's nothing in the art even that suggests he's a very, very big individual. I'm not saying, Andy Russo did a bad job of that. By no means. I'm just saying there's nothing to give me scale. Uh, Livonia Salone, or I don't know how you would pronounce that. Feel free to argue about that in the comments. Um, yeah, red green human warrior, 6 mana for a 4/4 first. Again, we're going back to 4/4 first strike for 6 mana. There's a few of those now, isn't there? Oh no, the others are typical. That's 6 mana. But that's 7. Okay. And legendary land walk, i.e., as long as the opponent's got a legendary land, they can't block this. Alright. Let's sort by EDH rank. Urborg and Yavimaya see a fair amount of play. As soon as somebody drops one of these, they can't block it. Boseiju and Otawara, and because these guys are often channeled instead. Nexthos, Takenuma, I think, is more likely to actually get played. Gemstone Caverns, I don't really see that unless you're trying to play some weird combo deck thing. Phyrexian Tower, yeah. Eigenjo, probably getting channeled. Inventor's Fair, I did not realize was legendary. And then you start scrolling down, and yeah, a lot of these, or like Growing Rights of Itlimoc, transforms into a legendary land. Okay, yeah. I think in most games, you're going to come across at least one player that cannot block her. And that's going to be trouble. You have a 6 mana for 4/4 first strike that at least one player cannot block. I think that's going to be pretty strong. I think it's also not unreasonable if you're playing a 4-player game with typical decks. So ignore my commons only decks and, other such shenanigans. I think it is not unreasonable that 2 players at the table cannot block her. Which means you're going to be able to get through for commander damage relatively easily. I would suit her up somewhat. Find her a way to get her like +3/+3. One way or another. Start going after the assuming you're going to go and you want to take out the table. Assuming you're that person. Use most of your red and green deck to protect yourself. Start attacking the person that is least able to block her. Go after that player. Or sorry, not least able to block. That is most likely to be able to block her. take out that person first. Because the sooner you can get that one dealt with, then you've got the other two at your leisure. Be aware though, if people see you do this, you're going to have a target on your forehead. But if you build with that in mind, if you assume from turn one, if you assume from deck construction with Livonia that you are going to be the arch enemy, and you embrace it with your deck construction and your playstyle, she is going to be a problem. Build your deck accordingly. I think she can be really good. You're going to have almost guaranteed one person, probably two at the table that you can take out with her. Focus on your biggest. Focus on the one that can handle her the easiest. So you've got, let's say you got 3 opponents at the table. If 2 of them, let's say one's got Urborg out and the other one's got Yevamaya out, you turn around and you look at the third person. If they don't have anything, deal with that person. Then once they're done, and now for you two. And they look at each other and go, uh-oh. Load up your deck with, I would put Giant Strength in there. Actually, no. I would put I would put this in there. Which, hilariously, also got printed in the same set. She now becomes a 5/4 that can regenerate. With First Strike and Legendary Landwalk. Yeah. I would, if I could figure out how to, and maybe it's something to work on at some point on stream, I would build Livonia as I plan on destroying the table. Oh, and you also get to play with all the additional combat step cards. Oh, yeah. Yeah, have fun with that. Let me throw that one at you guys and enjoy. Princess Lucretia. She is weird. She's a 6 mana 5/4 that taps for blue. Even back when I saw her come out, I wish she was like, I wish she did a little bit more. Like, even just tap for black or blue. But I think at that point, having a card that, like, anything that I can think of that taps for mana specifically, with the, let me think here. Antiquities, Arabian Nights. No. I think with the exception of the original dual lands, who only got the abilities because they had the appropriate basic land type, I think the only stuff that tapped for mana either tapped for mana of a specific color, i.e. one specific color, or tap for mana of any color. You didn't have, it would still be, I think, another year until we had, like, Karplusan Forest and the other allied Painlands who specifically spelled out, like Sulphur Springs, etc., who specifically spelled out you can tap for one of two colors. I think it took that long. I don't remember seeing anything else that let you tap for one of two colors. So I think that might be why it was still only tapped for blue. And I still think she probably should have cost like one less mana. 5 mana for 5/4. I would be fine cutting a colorless mana, but I think here's the thing. I believe part of the reason that cards in Legends cost what they did in terms of the amount of mana was when they expected you to be able to play it. I.e., this is a 6 mana creature. We're going to assume that it's going to take you to turn 6 until you can cast it. Okay, well, we'll make her blue-black. Well, no, her name's Princess. I believe a lot of these cards are designed with the assumption that it will take you to turn 6 or turn 7 or turn 8 or whatever. This is when you can probably get her out or get the creature out or whatever. And then they worked backwards from there. I think Princess Lucretia as a 5/5 probably would have been fine. I don't feel right making it a 5/6, and I don't feel right, even for back then, I don't feel right making it a 6/6. Because you're paying 6 mana. No. I probably... The other thing is, you're also looking at something that taps for mana. That's a creature. Not in green. This was a very unusual ability. And it tapped for colored mana. And you're what? You're a human wizard. I think it's just a normal... I don't see it anywhere. This is one of those cards where I don't really see a good home for it. Unless you're building a deck, unless this is like the face of a deck of creatures that do weird things. Especially if, again, just like Bartel Runax up here, you're going with cards that have, you restrict yourself down to a smaller card pool. I think maybe you can make sense of Princess Lucretia. But anything else that I could see, nothing's coming to me. As for Casimir the Lone Wolf, I'm sorry, Casimir. I think even in Legends there's better. Like, let's take a look here. Casimir the Lone Wolf. He's a 6 mana 5/3. No abilities. Alright. There, now they all fit. I'm going to start down here at the bottom. Tobias Sandrian. 1 less mana. 5/3 averages to a 4/4. This is a 4/4. This is essentially the same size creature for 1 less mana. At common, this is an uncommon. Rasputin Dreamweaver. You really want to find a way to combo with him. He's a 4/1 for a reason. He's combo potential. Jonan, you are looking at an extra white mana for 2 extra points of toughness. But Casimir is a human warrior, and you're a cat warrior, which suddenly makes deck construction interesting if you're looking at tribal synergies at all, for example. Hunting Bjornsson, we're looking at a 5/4 with Rampage 1. You are also uncommon. So change a colorless mana to a blue mana. You get an extra point of power and you get Rampage. Gusta Dirk, it's a 7 mana 4/4. Yeah, too much to compare between these two. Gusta Dirk has a couple of things going for it, though. And Aisha Tanaka, 4 mana for a 2/2 with banding that can counter artifacts. Like counter artifact abilities. Which is probably, considering she's just strictly colored mana. You know, it's 4 colored mana to cast her. But knows 4 colored mana and just simply tap to activate. This is what I was saying before about oh jeez, Tucked Near Deathlock. You could do that. And you have had a much better, much more powerful creature. Yeah, I think this is going to end up in the same boat as Gusta Dirk. But realistically speaking, Casimir, Tobias kicks your butt. Hunting Bjornsson kicks your butt. Casimir just doesn't have anything interesting about him. Apart from being like... like, again, he's a vanilla creature. Unless you're building around us. But even if you're building Azorius vanilla... Azorius vanilla, why aren't you playing... why aren't you playing... yeah, I mean, you could play Jedediah Jonan instead. You know, you could play Tobias Andrian instead. You have better options. Casimir is just, there's a reason he's a lone wolf. I don't know. You know what? I see one thing I could take from him. Richard Kane Ferguson art. There. 35 cards, including reprints. Or not reprints, multicoloured, like Arcane Denial here. So, 1. I'm just going to take a quick scan first to see. Alright. Just the 1. If I were to build an RKF themed deck, I could, there's enough cards in the base of it that I could build. Oh my god, that's funny. Pure Steel Paladin. And there's a handful of... Oh, wow. He's got some recent stuff, too. This is from MH3. That's not that long ago. That was a year and a half ago? Do we have any lands that he's done? Oh, no, no land. Okay. So you could try and build some kind of RKF tribal deck. You'd have to go somewhere else for your lands. But if you're willing to do that, I could see him heading up a deck that's primarily RKF. Although I might prefer Livonia for that. I don't know. It's Casimir the Lone Wolf, who I think would be a tough sell. Kei Takahashi? Kei Takahashi, I think, was the first card I remember seeing where you could actually prevent more than one damage. Like, a creature's activated ability allowed you to prevent more than one damage at a time. You know, and that's actually something interesting in my opinion. You're looking at basically double the cost of Samite Healer, double the size. Oh no, it only affects creatures. Oh no. Oh. Because if this was like Samite Healer, let's go back to an earlier printing. Let's go. Yeah, like even Revise said to any target. Any target to any creature or player, which would eventually, and that's, oh, that's 4th edition, okay. That would be 5th edition. What? Oh, anthologies. 6th edition would say target. Which is kind of funny. They actually took the word target out when they hit. When they hit 4th edition, they took the word target out. Even though so for 4th and 5th, they untargeted it. And then 6th edition, they put target back in. It was crazy. But yeah. Why did they have to just make it creatures? It's okay. It's not amazing, but it's okay. And you're probably you're a human cleric, which I could understand. I think I would want Kei Takahashi probably somewhere in the 99 as something more to protect my general. You're playing white and green. Both are colors that allow you to get additional untaps. You can probably make use of that. Alright. Let's go to the artifacts. 29. Oh, wow. Oh, no. Okay. So 5 mana with an upkeep cost of 3. Are you sacrificed? Yeah, you're sacrificed. However, anytime a source, anytime an instant or sorcery tries to deal more than, tries to deal more than 2 damage to you, it deals only 2. That's kind of funny. Now they're wow. Excuse me a sec. I have to send I have to send a quick message to someone because I just saw something funny. Uh, whoops. And where are you? That. Okay. I apologize. I was. So, Forethought Amulet, it's going to take some. Oh. 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 If somebody tries to. Does that work with cards like Stuffy Doll and the like? I'm not sure. No, Stuffy Doll is the one dealing the damage. Because whenever it's dealt damage, Stuffy Doll deals that much damage to whatever. But I think it works for cards like Deflecting Palm. Because I think Deflecting Palm doesn't change the source, it just changes. Oh, no, Deflecting Palm deals the damage. Okay. There are some effects like Deflecting Palm that do not change the source. Anyway, I don't think Forethought Amulet is likely to be played unless you're looking at again a very constrained set, you know, block of sets or whatever, or a very constrained time frame. Oh, okay. Marble Priest. Oh, okay. Marble Priest, 5 mana, 3/3 artifact creature. Any walls that can block it have to block it. And then combat damage dealt to it by walls is reduced to 0. This is only $2. Again, we get back to the walls are a creature type. I want to pick up a few of these, actually. Where's that? I want to pick up a few of you because, again, this is one of those cards that it's like, oh, you do a thing that's very interesting. Because in this case, it references a ability or whatever, or in this case a creature type that people completely forget is more a thing than they think it is. I think Marble Priest needs to see more play. North Star? North Star is not bad. North Star is probably best when you're putting it in a deck where you have enough awkward mana costs. Like if you're playing a deck that's got, you know, double blue, triple red, and quad green in the same deck. This basically takes 4 and adds it to the mana value of the spell you're trying to cast, but allows you to spend any kind of mana to cast it. So if you can produce, if you can produce blue and green mana easily enough in that, and you're trying to cast your triple red spell, you could spend an extra 4 mana, but then just spend blue and green mana and just call it a day and go, hey, by the way, this is a thing. Now, this is less of a concern these days because of how many different lands there are that produce how many different colors of mana. For example, if I go down to my 5-color deck, I'm playing Essica. It's a 5-color deck. If I just fast forward all the way down, I've got 5 cards here that are there to generate, to find lands or tap for mana or whatever. Any color, any color, any color, any color, any color. Name a color when it comes into play. Name a color when it comes into play. And just so much. And yet I still found room for 20 basic lands. What else is here? Let's see if there's any additional ways for me to generate. Oh yeah, you guys are all removal. Oh, do I have doop. Poison known. Plus I've got 6 cards in blue and green, which allow me to dig extra cards. Basically, as long as I can get blue and green mana, I should be... If I can get blue and green mana, I should be able to... And you can see that here too. Green, blue, green, green. I can cast that off of blue, green. If I can get blue and green mana, I should be able, and notice a lot of my dual lands tap for green because that's the most common color I need. I think it's fair to assume, actually, yeah, I think my Jundry Animator deck might have been a better example. But that being, but I digress. I think this is much less a big deal than it used to be back in the day. I think if you're restricting yourself down to, say, pre modern or, old school or something of that nature, then North Star is much more relevant. Or doing something fun like there was a MTG Goldfish Commander Clash video uh, last month, I think it was, maybe the month before, where each of the four players, had to pick a different decade. 1990s versus 2000s versus 2010s versus 2020s, and make a playable deck. I think in that context, the 1990s was allowed to play Soul Ring because they also didn't get to play with a bunch of the other stuff. You were not allowed to play. I think it was the 2010s got Arcane Signet because I believe it came out in the Throne of Eldraine in one of the Brawl decks that came with it, and I think that was 2019. So yeah, you had some interesting options. I think in a context like that, North Star probably would have been okay. But I think even at that point, you probably, like if you're playing two colors, definitely if you're playing three colors, you should have enough mana fixing. So yeah, um, eh. Cry Shield. Prevent all damage to be dealt this turn by target creature you control. That creature gets +0/+X till end of turn, where X is its mana value. Uh, Mana value greater than power? I don't need the exact. 10,213. Or 10 to 30. Power greater than mana value? 1229. About an eighth as many where the power is more. We're not even looking at equals because that's irrelevant to the conversation. There are 8 times as many cards that have a greater mana value than power. So, would be dealt by. So, this is basically switching up this is basically switching up its power or any other damage ability whatsoever it had. This is basically saying I'm going to forego any damage I could deal to gain a big buff to my defense. Hilariously, oh. Yeah, if you're building a deck that's conceptually very wall based. And I don't mean wall the creature type, I just mean wall as in like putting barriers up and stuff. And you don't care about, offense. If you're building a pillow fort deck, essentially, I think Cry Shield might be worth a consideration. If you just want to throw barriers up and you don't care how big your creatures say they are, because you just want them to be there to soak up damage, I think Cry Shield might just be. Oh, God. You realize I only just. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's worth a consideration. Because a lot of creatures have got, like, their 6 mana 4/4s or whatever, and you don't care about the fact that they're 4/4s. You look at their suite of abilities in a deck like that. What do you do for me? Okay, I guess you're a 0/10 for me now. Because 6 plus its original 4 defense. Yeah. I think that has a use. Alcor's Tomb. Target permanent you control becomes the color of your choice. This takes any card you have in play and makes it, hey, by the way, you're this color now. If you are at all concerned about people running, for example, protection from red or protection from black or something of that nature, you want Alcor's Tomb. If people are, and this could be you, are playing with cards like Gloom that affect cards of a specific color, Alcor's Tomb might actually be on your list of something to consider. Because rather than change the color of a spell being cast. Oh. Hilariously, this can take something that's got, devoid, for example, and force it into a color. It has to be something that you control, so more than likely something that you yoinked from somebody else. But that's entertaining. Okay. I can see this as a. This is like Painter's Servant when you only care about affecting your stuff. But you only do it to one card at a time. It only affects your permanents. Now, to be fair, most times that Painter's Servant is going to be getting used with respect to your own stuff. I think it's fair to assume that it's only going to be, you can affect one card at a time, and that's fine. So I think Alcor's Tomb, if you're looking for a deck to play a card like Painter's Servant to only affect your own stuff, Alcor's Tomb might be worth a consideration. In case you're wondering why I keep scrolling back up and down like this, my brain's a little bit like a squirrel sometimes. And I will, like, I can see, obviously, left and right where I am on the list, but because the way conversations work and stuff like that, going up and down, it's like, okay, where am I? Oh, right, I only just started the second round. Knowledge Vault. Knowledge Vault is going to be based mana-wise on the premise that Giam de Tome was balanced, which it took a very, very long time. It took a very, very long time for them to decide. Well, let's go back to the originals. Okay. Does that work? Thank you. Okay. Arcane Encyclopedia came out in M19. I'll go to the Magic Origins, that's fine, which is more or less M16. So 4 to cast, 4 tap, draw a card. Arcane Encyclopedia, 3 to cast, 3 tap, draw a card. Same rarity. This came out in Alpha. This came out in M19, which came out in 2018. The game came out in 93. So the game was 25 years old by the time they finally decided that Arcane Encyclopedia, that Giam de Tome it was okay to make it 1 mana less to cast and 1 mana less to activate. Because here's part of the problem that people see when they look at cards like Giam de Tome. And it's a way of looking at it. It's a critical, as in criticize, critique, etc. way of looking at it. People look at a card like Giam de Tome and they say, well, it's 4 to cast and 4 in tap to activate. That means it's 4 plus 4 in tap to draw your first card with it. I.e., that's 8 mana to draw a card. And they're not wrong, but that doesn't take into consideration you're not spending 8 mana all at once in most circumstances. You're spending 4 now and 4 at some other point to start drawing your extra card. That is something that is, it's probably turn, like, if you assume Giam de Tome without any sort of acceleration, you can probably cast it around turn, let's say turn 6. And then, if it's turn 6 when you're casting it, you'll probably start having the extra 4 available to start doing stuff probably around turn 12. Turn 10, turn 12, somewhere around there. Because you're going to have other stuff you want to do in the meantime. Compare that with Arcane Encyclopedia. It is not unreasonable to have that 3 mana available by turn, again, without acceleration, on turn 4. And I'm counting stuff like Soul Ring and so forth, obviously, as acceleration. And then having 3 mana left over, probably around turns, about the times that you could reasonably cast Giam de Tome, say about turn 6, turn 7, you can start holding up 3 extra mana. That's like an extra 4 turns that you've got to be able to start drawing cards off of it. It's 2 mana. But, I mean, Arcane Encyclopedia, again, even without acceleration, 3, 4, you're looking at 6 mana. That is a thing that is reasonable to have around turn 9. That's when you're casting and drawing your first card versus realistically probably being able to draw your first card off a Giant Day Tome. But our Arcane Encyclopedia just pulls ahead so fast because, you know, if things are just, whatever, then on turn 5 or 6, you can just start drawing off the encyclopedia if you have a bunch of lands, for example, in your deck. If you're playing a deck that's got like 45 lands, 45, 50 lands for whatever reason in a commander deck, you're going to hit your land drops. First of all, you're going to cast this on turn 3 regularly. Or if you're casting and activating, it's probably turn 7 by the time you're casting and activating, and you're going to hit your land drops. But, that being said, Knowledge Vault. Knowledge Vault, based on the assumption that Giant Day Tome was balanced, which at that point it would have been considered. And to be fair, even Magic Origins in 2015, 2016 was saying, yeah, it's still about balance. Knowledge Vault turned around and said, okay, well, how can we make this more interesting? Oh, how does this work? 0 second. If you do, discard your hand and put all cards exiled with Knowledge Vault in their owner's hand. When it leaves the battlefield, put. Oh! I see how that works. So, okay. So it's pay 2 mana, tap it, and exile card face down. So basically, you take it and you, even the original wording says, and place it face down under Knowledge Vault. So the same way where somebody would take a card like Oblivion Ring or Temporary Lockdown. If you ever watch people playing on Arena, for example, Temporary Lockdown, where it exiles anything that costs, I think, 2 mana or less. Any non-land, all non-lands that are 2 mana or less, or something like that. That feels right. You'll see all the cards. Here's Temporary Lockdown, and you'll see all the cards underneath saying, hey, by the way, here's everything that's exiled with it. So that when the lockdown leaves play, oh, okay, these all come back now. Knowledge Vault will basically do the same thing. You take the top card of your deck and you put it face down in the vault. And just keep doing that. And at some point, one of two things will happen. The vault will leave play for one of two reasons. One, somebody blows it up, which is where the last line comes in, which is what this bit of text here. If Knowledge Vault leaves play, put all the cards under it into your graveyard. Obviously, they'll be face up because the graveyard's always face up. But anything that you tucked aside and put away goes to your graveyard. However, if you take the bit in the middle, sacrifice Knowledge Vault to discard entire hand and take the cards under the vault into your hand. So you have the second ability, the second option, where you can sacrifice the vault and put the cards instead of you can put them into your hand. So one of two things will happen. You'll either sacrifice, like when the vault leaves play, you can either take those cards and put them in your hand by paying the 0, or you can just let them all hit the graveyard. There's a reason this is $75, and because it allows you to build up an additional hand. You don't know what's in them unless you have an effect like Sphinx. No. Sphinx Drawer Isle? Yeah, Sphinx Drawer Isle. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. So if you've got an effect like that, then you can keep putting cards that you want into the knowledge vault. And oh my god, if you already have a bunch of land, you can use this to just keep putting lands into the vault. And then if somebody blows up the vault, you go, "Aw, thunk, here's a bunch of land." And not care. Or you could do it the other way and put spells in. No, I would put land into the vault, because I'm just getting rid of them. Yeah, that's how I would do it. At least, barring some reason to do otherwise. But yeah, Knowledge Vault seems a pretty good card. And again, there's a reason it's $75. And there are rares from this set that are worth like under $10. And at some point, I may want to turn around and go, again, if I have an effect like Sphinx Drawer Isle, I'm going to start building a hand that has, cards of X type in it. And then when my hand is pretty near empty, I'll discard my hand and put those cards in it. Because that allows you to manipulate the kind of the kind of cards you'll end up with in your hand. Or you just simply set them aside so that, okay, I've only got like a couple cards left. Cool. Alright, well, at the end of your turn, I'm going to sacrifice the vault, discard the last couple of cards in my hand, get all this. This also allows you to do things with like reanimation shenanigans. You can, because you'll be pitching cards that are. This gives you a way to discard your hand, which is sometimes useful. I mean, there's a bunch of ways Knowledge Vault can see play. Its biggest drawback is it's $75, or if you live up here in Canada, that's probably closer to 100 by now. Actually, probably over 100 by now. I don't see anything. Let's call this 100. Convert. Yeah, basically $1.43. Go away. Do not care. So $75. Oh, the exchange rate is almost exactly at 70 cents. That's hilarious. Okay. Yeah. i.e. 100 Canadian and 70 US. So, ads, yeah, so that would be around, oh, say it's 110 Canadian. Yeah, I am not surprised. I'm starting to process a whole bunch of ways this can be used. Again, if you can afford it and you are willing to put in a commander deck, I would say sure, do it. Life Matrix. So many cards only use like a certain type of counter. How many cards actually use the word matrix? Life Matrix and Storage Matrix. And Storage Matrix only references itself. I think that's something that Wizards of the Coast needs to go back and do, is take a look at all the types of counters that already exist in the game and go, hey, by the way, can we reuse any of these elsewhere? Matrix counter. Is there a reason we can't reuse Matrix counter somewhere else? 4 to cast, 4 tap, put a counter on a creature that you can sack at some point to regenerate that creature. But you can only activate this during your upkeep. I mean, if I had a matrix, if I had a life matrix, I might throw it in a squee. Just as an extra way to keep him around. But I'd probably run the brute first. But life matrix, having a couple of counters floating around on him would be nice, so I can just go, oh, hey, by the way, are you trying to destroy him with what? Okay. No. Again, I could I could see him being used. I don't think it's generally that good. But again, one of those kind of, if you're building a Pillow Fort style deck, I think Life Matrix would probably be okay. Nova Pentacle. 4 to cast, 3 tap. Oh, a source is trying to deal damage to me? You look at your opponent and go, okay, I want something else to take the damage. What's going to take the damage? What? Yeah, I want something else to take the damage. What's going to take the damage? Hilariously, redirect damage done to you from one source to target creature of opponent's choice. The assumption for Commander is this is a 4-player game. So the opponent you choose, any other player that you choose, you can target your own, they can choose that one of your creatures takes the damage. They can choose that one of their own creatures takes the damage. They can also choose that one of the creatures belonging to one of the other 2 players takes the damage. I kind of like this as one of those, whatchamacallit, like a political negotiation kind of card. And it's from a source of your choice. That can be an instant, that can be a sorcery, that can be creature combat, that can be anything. And again, this is one of those situations where if you've got something like Eldrazi Monument or um, Chroma's Memorial. It just gets silly because they stop your stuff from dying or in depending on what it is being able to be targeted in the first place. Yeah, I would have no problem throwing this into a deck that's got something like that and going, where do you want to send it? And making and getting somebody to choose, somebody else's creature instead. Or maybe you've got like a temporary alliance going on, and instead of, well, well, tell you what, we won't hit one of your creatures, we won't hit one of my creatures. How about that thing right there? You know, you attack me with an 8/8 trample. Well, how about that 8 damage gets sent over to that creature right there? Oh, you think we should take out his general instead? That sounds like a better idea. So if you like the political maneuvering that can go on from a card like Nova Pentacle, it's not a cheap card, but it's not an expensive card. The cheap and expensive depend on what your concept of a barrier is. I I think anything above like 50 US would be considered actually an expensive, well, for my purposes would be considered an expensive card. Anything under like $10 is probably a cheap card. And then anything in that mid range, like in between, would be, it would depend on what you're on it depends on where you're starting. But I think it would be fair to I think that's a not unreasonable starting point. However, if you're looking at, for example, a deck that's all commons, if you're spending more than $2 on a card, that's an expensive card in terms of commons. So I think Nova Pentacle is one of those. Uh, and again, $20 for some people is a lot of money. And so your borders may be, a cheap card might be, $5 or, under $5, and an expensive card might be $20 or more. And that's perfectly valid. And I'm not going to say, well, it should be this and that. No. Stuff like that always depends on the individual and depends on the situation. I just feel like this is a card that's of a value where I would be okay spending this on a card for a deck of a given type. Like depending on the deck that I'm playing and the kind of games that I tend to have with it, etc., etc., etc. I would be okay with that. Because I have spent more on some cards before, depending on. But other decks, like for example, um, my Squee Aura's Voltron deck, this thing. Let's just switch over to details for a sec. TCG player, go the other direction. You know, I have Ulamog. It doesn't have to be Ulamog. I just want him in there to as a reshuffle effect. And if you look at like everything else in this deck, whoop, look at the right column here. Like my next most expensive card is like Eldrazi Conscription at 450. Tybalt's Trickery at 750. And I think I've already got one. And personally, I think any red deck that wants a counter spell should run Tybalt's Trickery. Uh, Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, basically just there as an interesting land that does something interesting. Literally, that's all it's there for. I don't have to run Valakut. I'm playing mono red, and it does something interesting. Have I got a better option? Have I got a less expensive option than Ulamog? I'll, dollar wise, I'll play that. Um, Eldrazi Conscription, I, I do specifically want that because that is a lot of pump. But Tibble's Trickery, yeah, like most of these cards are going to be like $2 or less. There's just a handful, like there's just a couple of cards that are more than that for very specific reasons. But yeah, Nova Pentacle, again, depending on the kind of deck and the kind of group that you plan on playing, sure. Voodoo Doll. Are you the same person that did all the, you know what? Sort by color. I can find out faster this way. No, you're not. Oh, that's interesting. I thought Voodoo Doll might have been done by the same person that did the rack and. Wait, what? They don't say who did it. Huh. Um. Yeah, but I thought the person that did Voodoo Doll. Oops. Wow. What? Black Vice. Oh, yeah. Richard Thomas. Yeah. Okay. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a pin counter on it. I'll put a pin on that. At the beginning of your end step. So at the start of your turn, this gets a counter. At the end of your turn, if this has got any, if this is tapped, or sorry, untapped, destroy it, and it deals damage equal to you equal to the number of pin counters on it. So start of your turn, put a pin counter on it. End of turn, if it's tapped, it blows up in your face. Which means you really want to use the Voodoo Doll at some point during your turn. Pay double X and tap it, where X is the number of counters on it. Damage to any target equal to the number of counters on it. This is one of those situations where you really want to be able to generate a crazy amount of mana on it. And, or manipulate the number of counters that are on it. Because if there's 5 counters on it, it's 10 and tap it to deal 5 damage. In a situation like that, I would rather play with Aladdin's Ring. Because that's 8 mana. I think that was 8 and 8. Yeah. 8 to cast, 8 tap for 4 damage to any target. And no worrying about blowing up in your face. However, so you destroy the voodoo doll, which means it can be made indestructible. It deals damage to you, which means you could throw it in a deck like King Darien. Yeah, Darien, King of Keldor. Where whenever you're dealt damage, you make that many soldier tokens. You then combine that with, some kind of Soul Sister shenanigans. Any damage should be dealt to you, dealt to enchant. I did not really put it. I put a couple of Soul Sister kind of cards in here, but like I have Suture Priest, and I think I might have one other. But yeah, if you can manipulate the number of counters that are on it, Voodoo Doll and King Keldor, and Darien, King of Keldor, you know, or not even care about that and just let it deal the damage, but then gain the life back with some kind of Soul Sister effect. Like, or maybe you just gain, if you've got enough Soul Sister effects, maybe you just don't care. Because the deck based on Soul Sisters, for those that aren't aware, this is where Soul Sisters comes from. You play Soul Warden. There's also Essence Warden, which is the exact same card in green. Soul's Attendant. Whenever another creature enters, you may gain 1 life. Whenever another creature enters, you gain 1 life. 1 mana for 1/1. That creature comes in play, you gain life. And, you combine that. At one point, it was combined with Essence Warden. Because, and not being just based on the art, keep in mind we're just looking at the art. Female character here, female character here, female character here. People looked at that and combined that, and it's like, well, they're all female characters that are doing this. Then there's a song that has the phrase, at least one song that has the phrase Soul Sister as a key part of the key lyric that you hear. And they put that together. And stuff that's based on, creatures come and play, gain a bunch, gain life from, became called Soul Sisters. That's where that comes from. Voodoo Doll you have enough Soul Sisters you can compensate for that. Especially if you've got some kind of like, you know, some kind of way to take damage and convert it into, like damage dealt to you, convert it into creatures. I think Voodoo Doll could work in a deck of that style. And then you just turn around and you'll just. The problem here is going to be, oh, wait. If you can do that, you then have an effect like Ashnod's Altar that lets you sack a creature for 2 mana. That can allow you to generate enough mana to do that. Yeah. Oh, wow. Voodoo Doll with a couple of Soul Sisters. And like Ashnod's Altar. You should be able to sack enough creatures to pay for this every turn. And counteract the pinging that you're taking. And then just do this on any turn you want. Okay. So yeah, there's a way to make that work. Alabar's Carpet. By Foglio. Foglio art is just amazing, and you can tell, the Foglios were involved by the kind of art. I don't know if it's Kaya or Kaja. I've always said Kaja Foglio. And Phil Foglio have this kind of art style. Again, same kind of style, and it's just fun and entertaining and a little silly and so on and so forth. And yeah, I always enjoy that. Anyway, prevent all damage to be dealt to you this turn by attacking creatures without flying. So basically, this is a cheaper version of Moat. What do I mean by cheaper? Well, it's 5 to cast and 5 in tap as an artifact activated ability. Compare this, which is a 4 mana enchantment that is 937 USD. This is 50. And it effectively does the same. Like, this stops creatures without flying from attacking in the first place. This prevents the damage. So they can still attack, they can still get the triggers. It just won't actually smash through for any damage. Most of the time that works out to the same thing. And because this is an artifact, there are ways to untap it. There are other ways to stop, combat damage. But I think if you want a Moat style effect and you're not playing white and have a crazy amount of money in your wallet to spend on a card like this, you're not playing blue, which largely gives you Stormtide Leviathan, I think it is, and you're not playing green, which gives you Arborea and Sandworm Convergence. So basically you're looking at red or black. You might, or, mono brown. If you're looking at somewhere in that color scheme, you might want to look at Alabara's Carpet. The mana batteries will all clump together. 4 to cast, 2 tap to put a counter on it. I will point out they are specifically charge counters. This is relevant because they interact with anything else that cares about charge counters. You can tap it for 1 mana of the appropriate color of the battery. So the worst it is I pay 4. I cast this for 4 and then I tap it for white. Or you can eventually store up counters on it. And again, because it's charge counters, anything that interacts with charge counters is great and can throw more on. Proliferate also works well here. And then you can tap it and remove any number of counters from it. And you'll get 1 mana of the appropriate color, plus an additional mana for each counter you removed. So if you removed 5 counters, you're getting 6 mana. 1 for tapping it, and then 1 for each of the 5 counters. So 6 in total. So if you're sitting there with like, I don't really have anything to do this turn. By the end of your turn you still haven't done anything. Just pay 2 and tap it. Store more mana into it. It's fine. The fact that it interacts with charge counters is great. It's phenomenal. And there's 1 for each color. White is at the bottom, which I understand because white is a color for commander. Green is the one above that because green doesn't green doesn't need it as much as the other colors do because it's got all the elves and it's got all the Gaia's Cradle effects and so on and so forth. So it generating mana is easy. Red mana batteries in the middle. Where are the last 2? Them black and them blue. Okay, yeah. Blue, I can see it's most likely to actually... It's most likely to actually want to be able to store the mana up and then use it later. Yeah, the mana batteries all fit into that same kind of scheme. And they're all fine. I don't really have anything else to do this turn. Okay, I'll just store the mana here. Horn of Deafening. It is a cute card. It's 4 to cast and basically fogs a single creature. I would not complain about somebody throwing this in their commander deck when you are concerned about a particular player who's playing a Voltron deck, i.e., I take my commander, I throw some stuff on it to make it big and powerful, whatever. Then you go, Horn of Deafening. I'm not taking anything from you. Wait, what? Yeah, I'm not taking anything from you. Although I will point out you have to target the creature. So if they have Shroud or Hexproof, it's going to be a problem. You have to get rid of the sources of shred or hexproof first. If it has ward, you just have to pay a little extra. You know, even ward 4, okay, 6 tap, but that's probably going to be easier than the like 14 damage or whatever that you'd be taking. So, it's fine. As for lands, so these are all in one chunk. They're all the bottom of the barrel. And actually, how many lands are there? 10, which is basically 5 and 5. Seafarers, Key, Quay, however you want to pronounce it, Unholy Citadel, Mountain Stronghold, Adventurers Guild House, and Cathedral of Sarah. All basically do the same thing. All your legends of a certain color gain bands with other legends. We've discussed banding in the unlimited video we did. Arabian Nights we did. I don't remember if we covered Antiquities. I'm pretty sure we covered this, and specifically these lands we touched on briefly last video. But basically, banding helps with damage distribution in combat and with how creatures can be blocked or how they can block. And for the most part, it doesn't matter. And bands with other is even more like banding is already awkward to deal with in the first, but when you hit bands with other, like the only so it's an uncard, removes banding, bands with other wolves, bands with other wolves of the hunt, gives banding to all your legends of a certain type, removes banding. So the only card that can natively band with other creatures is the tokens put in play with Master of the Hunt. Because Old Fogey, it's an uncard that depends on what your group allows you to do, etc., etc. But as far as not uncards are concerned, you're looking at Master of the Hunt. The 5 lands that say, hey, by the way, you know, your legends of a certain type can band with others, and everything else just removes it. These 5 lands are not worth playing at all. Let's move on. Teleria. Name used for a few lands of interest. Tellurian Academy, Teleria West. There's another one, and I'm drawing a blank at the moment. Also, there's Tellurian Terror. Oh, Tellurian Academy. Did I mention Tellurian? Oh, no, Tellurian Academy's not legal. But anyway, these 4 lands here all tap for mana of an appropriate color. And then do something else. Teleria can remove banding. Which I don't mind somebody playing this card because there at the it's basically a legendary island with a different name and not a relevant land type. So if you're looking for a land in a mono blue deck that's not an island and does something else, Teleria is fine. It's okay. It's acceptable. If you need something that's I want another blue land that does something interesting. Teleria, you could do worse. Hammerheim. So Teleria has to be activated during somebody's upkeep, which means that they somehow have a creature that's got banding and haste, which realistically means they play a creature that has banding and they've got something in play that gives their stuff haste. Realistically, that's the way it's going to work. You can't remove the banding unless you somehow get them to play that creature or get that creature into play during their upkeep. At which point you go, okay, now that that's resolved, now I'm going to remove banding. Hammerheim, on the other hand, no restriction to when you can play it. Again, it's basically a mountain. Oh, that looks cool. Oh, related searches. I have to go back here. Let's see if I can find one quickly. Wow, that's kind of weird. Weird. But usually, like I shouldn't say usually, but if you've got something down here, it'll say, you know, cards affected by or whatever, whatever. Oh, um, would Trinket Mage work? Yeah, related searches. Artifacts that Trinket Mage can find. Type artifact, mana value less than or equal to 1. Not contraptions, not attractions. And it pulls up this. So, this is what you normally find in something like related searches. I have never seen it written this way. Creatures Hammerheim Pones. Which is really short and simple. Hey, by the way, does it have any type of landwalk? Here you go. But, yeah, again, this is basically a mountain. It's a mountain that doesn't have a mountain type with a much better ability. Remove all landwalking ability from target creature till end of turn. Which means you can do it, you know. Yeah, I'm attacking you. Cool. I'll remove its swamp walk. I can now block it with this. Ah, crap. Tabernacle at Pendrell, Vale. $2,000 for a very good reason. Hilariously, because what? Commander Game Changer list. What does this mean? Oh. This literally only got posted today, apparently. Yeah, February 11th. Okay. No mana sentinel or extra turns. No 2-card infinite combos. No mana sentinel. No chaining extra turns. No 2-card infinite. No game changers. Alright. Okay, so I'm going to have to take a look at that properly later. But This is all stuff that can be that can take it. This is all stuff that can take a deck from it's fine to really, really powerful, really swinging, etc., etc. Okay. Oop. All right. Yeah, because since this destroys the creature, this can actually affect how the game, like, because it destroys the creature, if you've got Eldrazi Monument or something similar out, you can just not worry about paying the upkeep because all your creatures are indestructible, so you don't care. You sack a creature to the monument and you just keep going. Okay. There's a reason it's on the game changers list. I get it, because it can very much affect how the game plays. Urborg, again, a swamp with a swamp that's not called a swamp that does something interesting. Losing Swamp Walk is occasionally relevant. Losing First Strike, I think, is really big. So yeah, definitely would play it. And then Pendlehaven. Pendlehaven's a bit of a weird one because this has been known to see um this is known to see modern play in, if you're playing, like, I think Elves has been known to play it, and I think Infect has been known to play it, because normally you're looking at like a 1/1 Glistener Elf or something like that, and then you tap this to make it a 2/3. And then you add other effects and yada yada yada. So, but I think it's much less likely to see playing Commander because 1/1s just generally are not that good unless you're building a certain style of deck. Like if you're building Elves, for example, you need a decent amount of 1/1s because that's where you get most of your cheap accelerants. You know, your Elvish Mystic and your Llanowar Elves and your Fintorn Elves and your Arbor Elf and your I forgot what it's called. It's the one for snow. Boreal Druid. It can also randomly pump, you know, Dryad Arbor, etc., etc. So, but unless you're playing enough elves, and just for reference, we'll pull up my Golgari list. And yeah, I always go to the visual spoiler when I'm doing this on, when I'm doing this on stream, just so people can see them faster and easier. And you'll notice my elf list, I've got 14 1-drops, and they're all 1/1s apart from the sniper here. For 2-drops, there's 12. Scamfire Avenger and Devoted Druid and an incubation druid are not 1-drop, so that's 3, so that's 9. 9 plus 13, that's 22 1/1s. And then 3 mana, I've got Fyndhorn Elder, Fierce Empath, Farhaven Elf, so that's 3. I doubt I've got any in 4. And then non-elf creature. Yeah. And then I probably have Dryad Arbor in here. No, I don't have Dryad Arbor. Okay, that's fine. Oh, yeah, and then I got stuff like Elsworn Giant, where, landfall make an elf token. And the occasional other card like that. So, yeah. I'm probably going to have like at least 30 elves and, 30 1/1s in here. So, Pendrell would be perfectly fine in a deck like that. But a lot of them, their big thing is I tap for mana, or I untap lands, or I fetch lands, or whatever. Their big thing is to get lands out. To improve my mana. So yeah, they're there for mana generation, and being able to turn it into a 2/3 is nice, is useful, is handy. But it's only at all playable in a deck like that because I happen to have enough 1/1s. Compare that to, I don't know. What about Steel and Sack? Coffin Queen? I see Coffin Queen. Let's go back to details for a moment. Nope. Okay, visual spoiler. Do not group. And then sort cards by type. Creatures. This puts most of my creatures together. Souls of the Lost will never be a 1/1. Yeah. So unless I come across anything else down here. Legendary. Nope. Yeah. No. I have 1/1 in that deck. So Pendlehaven, even if I could play it, would not do anything useful. So yeah. But again, it all depends on the kind of deck you're playing. And in case you're wondering why we don't see one for white, now there's 11 cards. And this is the white mana, the white member. Let's just go by name. Removes all landwalk. Bounce a legend, i.e. a legendary creature, because at that point legend was a creature type. Pump a 1/1. Remove banding of any sort. Remove first strike or swamp walk. Banding commander, because everybody wants to be able to play with a commander, and this says no. Anyway, I think we're going to call it for this evening. Wow, This is actually going to be a relatively short video. It's not even 4 hours. And I think I spent the first 20 minutes talking about why I was late starting my stream. Why are you? Plus, you're. This is crazy. Oh, of course, it's also only available as a foil, and it's serialized. If I want to play with Caracas, I can pick up through Ultimate Masters for what? So for under 20 Canadian anyway. Or I could get Eternal Masters, which is the same artwork. Can I at all? Nah. The only way to get the original art in paper is the one from Legends. But that's still that's still $40 US. Between 55 and 60 Canadian. I might do that. I might try and get my hands on a few copies in case I ever want to play them in Legacy or something. Not a lot of copies, just like probably two, maybe three at some point over time. But yeah, anyway, I think that's it for tonight. So I guess next week we start on The Dark. That should be an interesting one. Let's just go for a quick preview. I think you are DRK? Yes. Started by EDH Descending. Oh, well, we got some interesting ones. Yeah. Some of these I take a look and go, yeah, okay, I could see a spot. And some of these I take a look and go, oh, by the way, hilariously, since I see it on the screen now, notice how its typeline simply says creature? Compare that to Sylvain Elves. Creature dash elf. It literally has no creature type. This is also going to be a relatively short set because there's only 119 cards. There's 122 in total. Oh, card variations. 3. Okay. Had extraneous and uneven black line. Right across the... Oh, this thing. If you take a look at the text box down here, whereas on a normal version that doesn't exist. Fountain of Youth. A third had a small pen-like mark on the left side. This over here, which doesn't exist on a normal version. And then Gaia's Touch have the text and mana symbols shifted significantly to the left. If you notice the name, the type, so basically this row, and everything in the text box is over on the far left compared to this. This is over to the right much more. But yeah, there's only 119 cards. Let's just take a quick scan. 4, 8, 12, 16, 19. 4, 8, 12, 16, 19. 4, 8, 12, 16, 18. 4, 8, 12, 16, 18. 4, 8, 12, 16, 18. 3 multicolored. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 artifacts, and 4 lands. And we can probably get through the entire list next week. Legends, the Dark, Fallen Empires. And maybe we get into Fallen Empires next time. 187 cards. However, it says 187. That's because there are 4 different printings of Combat Medic. There are 3 different versions of Feral Zealot, etc., etc. Let's do this as a checklist. Nope. Will that work? 102. There's 102 unique cards in Fallen Empires. 4, 8, 12, so 16 there, 16. Whoops, damn it. 4, 8, 12, 16, 12, 16, 16, 4, 8, 11 artifacts, 4, 8, and 11 lands. Anyway, yeah, might do them all next week. That being said, I think I am off for tonight. We'll see you guys next week. So long. Thanks for all the fish and all that other jazz. Pasta la pizza, baby. Poop. Noodle.